Welcome to the show, Carl. How you doing, my man? You doing okay?
How are you? How are you?
I am doing well. Carl, let me pull up your info. Carl, I'm glad you could join me because there is information coming out that I am fascinated by that I want to get your take on. So, Carl Jha, he is host of Silk and Steel podcast focused on China's surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You can follow him on Twitter at Carl Jha. You can follow his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk, letter N. And you can support their podcast on patreon.com, Silk and Steel. Carl, we are looking, from my point of view, at the context of the world changing on its axis. And what I mean by that is that in the same way that Ukraine wasn't really about Ukraine, Iran is not really about nuclear weapons, even though they're using that as a stalking horse every bit as much as George Bush did. I strongly suspect that what's going on here is A, they want to take them out for Israel. B, they want to be able to establish a dominant position in the Middle East without any kind of competition. C, they know that Iran is instrumental to the security of Russia and China, and that there's a relationship between both, particularly China, in response to energy. And so when I saw this, where is it? Where is it? Right here. When I saw military armaments coming from China, they pointed out that China turned off its transponder as it got close to Iran, effectively dropping off a delivery for assistance. It made all the sense in the world. Iran is instrumental to China's energy security. It's a country of 1.3 billion people. And under no circumstances would it be in China's best interest for Iran to fall. And that is also true for Russia. Am I getting this right? That ultimately a lot of this is not entirely related to Iran, even though it is, but it's also seen as maybe they think Iran is the weak link in BRICS. And that because it hinges on both China and Russia, that if you can take it out, you can diminish both countries, effectively allowing you to pick off one at a time. Give me your take on that. What are your thoughts?
Well, China obviously do not want Iran to fail. The same way China does not want Russia to fail. As a result of Western sanction during the Ukraine conflict. Right now there's a lot of people who are, like screaming at China. It's like, why China not stepping in? Okay, first of all, right? I don't think Iran even asked for help yet from China. I think Iran got this right now. I mean, if it's just Iran and Israel, Iran can deal with Israel. As we saw, Iranian missiles are already penetrating Israeli air defense. Now what we saw is actually the stocks of Israeli both Iron Dome and the U.S. provided that system. They're running out of interceptor missiles because we're seeing more and more hits from Iranian missiles. And like I said before, there's no defense system that can be overwhelmed with a great number of missiles. And right now, the more Iron Dome or THAAD system they shoot, the less missiles they have. United States already have a supply problem. They have, they have deployed a lot of these air defense systems first to Ukraine, and now and according to our Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, they actually have to divert some of the system to Israel. Because the U.S. just does not have the same industrial capacity to have the material to wage a two-front war. And I even saw some liberals on the Twitter screaming, it's like, oh, why are we wasting those THAAD system? Those precious interceptor missiles could save our aircraft carrier in a conflict against China. I'm like, okay, dude, you totally missed the point. If those THAAD missiles could not stop the Iranian missiles, guess what? China have better missiles, more advanced missiles, and they have magnitude more missiles.
Yes.
I mean, China is making anti-ship ballistic missiles in an automated lights-off factory that's run by robots. They can make them 24/7 rolling off the assembly line. So I mean, the fact is, from the experience, what we saw right now, the Iranian attack on Tel Aviv, that means the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier group are toast. They're toast. There's no defense against a ballistic missile attack because even if only 30% of the missiles makes through the missile shield, those aircraft carriers are toast. Right.
Yeah.
And the fact those U.S. Ships, capital ships, their missiles are outranged by the Chinese ballistic missiles based in China. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, Iran is perfect. They can handle Israel. This is why Israel is screaming at U.S. like, please, you gotta help us. You gotta join it. You have to deal with Iran because Israel does not have the capability and the capacity to deal with Iran on their own. This is the critical test for Trump's presidency right now. Whether Trump will do as Netanyahu asked him to do. I mean, so far we have seen U.S. has been complicit in the Israeli first strike against Iran. They basically according to Israeli media at least, U.S. basically collaborated with Israel to lull Iranian to think, oh, we're actually in a peace negotiation. We're actually trying to work out a deal while the Iranian have their defenses down. Israel launches attack. Now, Trump is saying, oh, I just want the Iranian to come to the deal. Look, Israel literally killed all the negotiators. They took out all the Iranian the deal makers. Israel does not want any kind of deal. They just want war, and they want United States to participate in it.
Yep.
And so what's going to happen in the next 48 hours is crucial. Is whether U.S. will join in this attack. Now, there's a couple constraints on the U.S. too. I mean, I understand this is why some of these people, the pro-resistance people, are screaming at China and Russia. It's like, why are you not helping Iran more? Because they think once the U.S. join in, you'll be game over. Like Iran will collapse. No. Look.
See, I don't think that. Yeah, go ahead. Because I don't think that either.
Iran is not Syria. Iran is not Iraq. Right. And even to carry out the Iraq war, United States has spent months building up the logistics in Middle East to host the hardware and the 250,000 troops they needed. Right, like right now, U.S. simply don't have that kind of troop strength in the Middle East. Right, and what they do have, they just send a 50-year-old Nimitz aircraft carrier to Persian Gulf. The aircraft carrier was literally due to retire next year, right? I mean, that aircraft carrier is older than me, and I'm almost 49. Okay, I'm almost 49. That aircraft carrier is older than me, and I don't know what they think they were gonna accomplish because they had so much problem with dealing with Houthis in Yemen. And this is why a lot of people think maybe they're send this old to be scrapped aircraft carrier to stage some kind of false flag attack like the Gulf of Tonkin #2. Gulf of for the people who are younger in your audience, Gulf of Tonkin is a false flag attack this stage in the Gulf of Tonkin in South China Sea and blame it on the North Vietnamese. That was a cause for U.S. full participation in the Vietnam War. I mean, that is a real possibility. I'm sorry if you're one of the sailors right now on Nimitz. I mean, hopes and prayers. I know. But right now you are literally being sent as a tripwire, right? As a tripwire to trigger for a condition for U.S. entry into the Middle Eastern war, and right now there's a lot of uncertainty. But what I want to emphasize that Iran is actually a regional power in the Middle East. This is why Netanyahu wants so desperately to take out Iran, and Iran they have a very right now the Iranian people are rallying around the flag right now. You have Iranian liberals on the street literally demanding their government to go nuclear, to have nukes.
Yes. So
Because
that
that's
a woman with no hijab or anything, hair just out, just flipping out. Yep.
Exactly. The same type of women normally will be weaponized by these regime change ops in the West, saying, "Oh, we need to help Iranian women to achieve freedom." And she is out there with hair flowing and saying, "We gotta have nukes.
We need
gotta
a bomb.
have nukes.
We need the bomb.
We need the bombs to defend ourselves."
Yep.
And I think that's a logical conclusion right now. I mean, none of the, I mean, we know all these scripts, they're trying to run the Iraq war script on us right now. You know, you have reports on Fox News says, "Oh, Iranian have nuclear weapons. We cannot have Iran to have nuclear weapon." Like, look, Israel has been saying this for like 30 years. Like, Iran is only like few months away from having nuclear weapons. They said that in 1995.
Yep.
And we have Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testify just recently in front of Congress. She said Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon and they're not building a nuclear program at the moment, right? But now I just saw a tweet from Trump. He said, "Oh, I don't care what she said.
Yep.
Iran just cannot have nuclear weapons." I mean, it looks like maybe Trump made up his mind. The one thing, there's seemed to be a split among the MAGA supporters, right? Because a lot of them genuinely don't want United States to get involved in another Middle Eastern war. I mean, this is actually, I think this cross the board, very unpopular idea to get into another Middle Eastern war. But one thing we also have to keep in mind is that Trump is on his second term, so he doesn't give a shit.
That's right.
He's not worrying about running for re-election, right? I mean, he's almost he's 79, right? Like almost 80 years old. And this guy, this is it. This is him. He can do whatever he wants. He's not worried about leaving I don't even think he worry about leaving a legacy at this moment. But we'll actually have to see what's going to happen in the next 24, 48 hours. But like I said, logistically right now, logistically speaking, United States does not have the wherewithal to commit to a full war against Iran. They may launch bombings, bombings, but bombings is not going to bring the regime change in Iran. They're already being bombed by Israel. And the Iranian people are very resilient. They have suffered like decades under sanctions. And right now, if anything, the Iranian people they're very patriotic people. They will rally around the flag. So without the ground troops, without ground invasion, there's no possibility of a regime change in Iran. So, all these people saying, "Oh, why is China and Russia not stepping in?" Look, this is a case. There's a Chinese idiom called when it comes to betting the concubine, the eunuchs are getting more impatient than the emperor. It's like, look, Iran hasn't even asked for help yet. Iran hasn't even officially asked help from China or Russia. They got this. And so far they got this, right? I mean, if U.S. formally enters the war, it might change the relationship a little bit, but there's still things China could do without fully, be a direct participant in the war. One way China supported Russia through the Ukraine conflict is keeping the trade line open. Russia, everything Russia needed, they could get sourced from China, like all the chip. All these Western newspapers said, "Oh, like Russia, they're running out of semiconductors. They have to get the chips on the refrigerator." That's nonsense. They could get those chips. They could get those chips from China. China has no problem manufacturing those chips. The American sanction on Chinese semiconductors. This only it affects the most cutting edge, like 3 nanometer chips, right? But China can right now can manufacture 20 nanometer chips no problem on its own.
Yeah.
And guess what? You don't need 3 nanometer chips to go into missiles. You only need missiles. You only need 3 nanometers chips to go into your iPhone because you want it as small as possible so you can carry the phone around. But when you have a big ass missile, space is not the problem. So yeah, your missiles don't need 3 nanometer chips. And for that, China can provide Russia. And we saw that, recently I saw an interview with a Russian drone operator. He basically said, we source all our parts from China. We source our chips from China. We have no problem getting those. So in that case, this is what China could provide to Iran. And remember, China just recently optimized their rail link with Iran. So they can ship all this material over land that's outside the reach of U.S. Navy, right? And the rail to Iran, it goes from China through Central Asia to Kazakhstan, to Uzbekistan, to Turkmenistan, and to Iran. And guess what? Xi Jinping is just visited Kazakhstan. He got a red carpet welcome in Kazakhstan, right? I mean, I think the Central Asia, they're pretty much on board with China, right? Their neighbor is China and Russia, and the thing is, there's another area where China can help. Remember we talk about tariff war, and China, one of the trump card China will is their shipment of rare earth minerals, the critical minerals. That made Trump really uncomfortable. It was like saying, China was restricting rare earth and all that. So after the agreement in London, China granted export licenses to a couple United States car makers for rare earth and rare earth magnets from China. But China never took away the ban on U.S. defense industry. So Lockheed Martin, which makes F-35, guess what? They're not still not getting those magnets or rare earth. And right now, every American company, if they want to get rare earth from China, they have to write an application to the Chinese Commerce Ministry to get it approved.
Please,
right
give
now,
me
Chinese
rare earth
Commerce
minerals.
Ministry says
Oh, wow.
we approve the sale to these specific U.S. car makers, right? So because we don't want them to go bankrupt. We don't want to cripple you economically. But they said nothing about supplying Lockheed Martin, all these the magnets they need in their missiles, and we know they have been their stockpiles of missiles have been dwindling because Pentagon said so. They have been used up in Ukraine and Israel, and the United States is not be able to replenish them right now because China is not ready to resume Sumerian supply to United States. And so this is another thing where China could help by continually restricting rare earth shipment to U.S. defense industries. And in the meanwhile, there was actually a report from Wall Street Journals that this happened several days before the Israeli attack that said Iran has been purchasing tons of materials for making ballistic missiles from China, right? So whatever Iran needed to make more missiles, they probably already have it, and they probably already received it, and I'm sure China will happy to continue to provide them, and rail this via the overland links, and so this is one area where Iran does have advantage because each interceptor missiles of the U.S. THAAD system costs $12 to $13 million.
And they fire them things off like hotcakes. Yeah.
And each THAAD battery, which composed of the launcher, the radar system, everything, each THAAD battery costs $1 billion with a B. So when I saw people, it's like, oh, why can't we crank up more production? I'm like, okay, well, good luck with that. First of all, you're not going to get any more rare earth shipment from China, and second of all, those things cost a buttload, and those this is another reason. Iran was basically they sent several waves of attack against Israel.
Yes.
And they first sent their old missiles, all these missiles that have been sitting in their arsenal for 20, 30 years. They're sending the older missile first to deplete all these interceptor missiles. And now they're sending a mixture of older missiles and advanced missiles to confuse the Israeli air defense system. This is why we're seeing more and more hits. And now it's obvious they're starting to run out of these interceptor missiles, and we don't really know the supply situation, how fast the United States can replenish them. But the fact is, Israel right now is letting those Iranian missile hit downtown Tel Aviv, and you saw that one Iranian missile literally turned the light off in Haifa. So that's gonna continue. Guess what? Iran still have more missiles coming, and you're gonna only have the Israeli Iron Dome system and the U.S. THAAD system will become more and more ineffective as you're running out of interceptors. And so as long as U.S. don't enter the war directly, Iran has the upper hand. Iran
well, that's the question. That is the question, right?
Okay.
Because we don't know the answer to that. Yeah, because we don't know the answer.
Well,
I mean, Donald Trump is signaling that he is. I mean, if you look at the all of the armaments that were moving to the Middle East, all of the cargo planes apparently for refueling in the air, it looks like they're prepping for something. And if you think about it, Israel's taking an L. Like, they are being militarily defeated before our eyes. And Iran just with complete confidence, all right, next wave starts tomorrow. Like, this is like just as workmen going to work. All right, and they're doing this in the daytime now. So this is like just constant barrage of missiles that are just flying in and hitting. They just hit Mossad headquarters. They just hit it. They just hit a cargo, not a cargo thing, a warehouse that, of course, Israelis are like, oh my God, that's a civilian target. Okay, well, Israel just hit a media organization. Like, this is just nonsense, right? So obviously, in a war of attrition, you're absolutely right. They can't keep this up. They just can't. So Trump is going to have to make a choice. They're begging him to get involved. Netanyahu is like, oh, they're trying to kill Trump. Oh, they're going to pass a missile off to the Houthis. And to your point, just so the audience would know exactly what we're talking about the Tulsi Gabbard thing, I showed that clip for the last couple of days. This is Donald Trump asked, hey, your DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, said that Iran wasn't making a missile. What do you have to say about that, Trump?
But how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having.
I don't care what she said. I don't care what she said. Who cares what Tulsi Gabbard says? She's just my DNI. Ain't that amazing? Ain't that amazing? This is so ludicrous of a harebrained scheme that many guests that would come on my show would say, there's no way Trump is going to be okay with this. And I would say, these people are not rational. They're ideologues, and they will be stupid enough to attack Iran. And lo and behold, they ran into a buzzsaw. And now Trump, who has already depleted himself in Ukraine, is overextended now because Europe is too weak to really do anything. So all of them are dependent upon the United States for weapons and for air defense and everything else. He's pulling it from Ukraine to give it to Israel, which means Ukraine has been, I don't know if you've seen Ukraine recently for the last few days, they have been getting toasted. And the media in the US hasn't paid attention, just hadn't cared. Like they've been like the buildings are just getting hit over and over again. Zelensky has been screaming at the top of his lungs and nobody cared. And now they're running out. And they will still want to pivot to China. Still want to pivot to China. By the way, I'm not one of those people that was screaming, oh my God, why isn't China getting involved? I just want to point that out. I did. When I saw the cargo ship coming in, I was like, oh, China's involved. China's involved. Where do you think this goes from here?
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi had a call with the Iranian Foreign Minister, and China made his position very clear. He said China support China explicitly condemns Israel's violation of Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. I'm reading the readout right now. Firmly oppose reckless attack targeting Iranian officials and causing civilian casualty. China supports Iran in safeguarding its national sovereignty, defending its legitimate rights and interests, and ensuring the safety of its people. Israel's actions seriously violate the purpose and principle of United Nations Charter and basic norms governing international relations. In particular, Israel's attack on Iran's nuclear facility has set a dangerous precedent with potential catastrophic consequences. China supports international community in upholding justice, speaking out as soon as possible. China also urged countries that have influence over Israel to make concrete effort to restore peace. Well, that country, United States.
The one.
That's just United States. Really. I mean, China would not want to see Iran fail. I mean, China gets 89% of Iranian oil sells to China.
Right? Are you serious?
Yes, that's a majority. Wow. And people are saying, oh yeah, this exists. Well, it's actually not existential for China. I do have to make that clear because that only makes up 16% of China's oil imports. Right, but China is getting those oil at a deep discount. China is getting very cheap oil from both Iran and Russia due to the Western sanctions. So obviously, it's not ideal for China to lose that energy source, even if China could easily replace them from elsewhere. And so China would do what needs to be done to support Iran economically, materially. I don't think China will directly get involved, just like they didn't directly get involved in the Ukraine conflict,
right?
Because there will be no need to. And about the U.S. Involvement, let's just remember, like I mentioned again, right now there's no logistically. It's simply we just simply don't have the troops right now to do a ground invasion, and if they just want to launch a couple of symbolic bombings, that's not going to make a difference. That's not going to make too much of a difference on the ground. You cannot do regime change by bombing. Iran is not like Libya, right? Where Libya they had power like the anti-government forces to overthrow Gaddafi. There's nothing like that in Iran right now. Right now, Iranian people are united. So without ground forces, the what U.S. attack will actually do is expose all the American bases in the Middle East. Guess what? All the American bases in Qatar, in UAE, they're all within the Iranian missile range, right? And Iran could easily shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which of course will send the oil price sky high, and that will be economically destabilizing. I mean, it's gonna add into inflation pressures for sure. And there's a lot of options on Iranian side. I mean, in fact, if U.S. do hit Iran, there's nothing holding Iran back to hit U.S. aircraft carrier groups in the region. There's nothing to hold back against Iran to hit those U.S. bases in the region. And the U.S. still have bases in Syria and Iraq. Guess what? That we're gonna see those bases in Syria and Iraq getting decimated. Iran, that is within Iran's capability. Now the question then becomes: would United States wager, widen the scale of war? Involving putting more military asset and even possibly ground invasion. Of course, that would be a giant clusterfuck because Iran is much more bigger and more powerful than Iraq ever was, and people are still old enough to remember Iraq. And you'll be immensely unpopular. So we're gonna have to see how much Trump is willing to stake his presidency on this
that
point,
is the question.
on this war.
Carl, that is the question. I don't have an answer to that question. I mean, my thought is he goes in, he attacks militarily. I don't know if he lets his rogue well, it's not a rogue actor. I don't know if he lets his proxy fail miserably in the light of day this way. God, man, what is going to happen to the weapon stocks? Like Patriots? Who the hell wants that? Like the Arrow system, the Iron Dome, like who the hell wants to buy that after seeing them get militarily defeated in this way? Looking at the Chinese equipment that these guys were having in Pakistan and seeing what they were able to do in India. I that's amazing to me. But I guess my point is,
look at what
he-
Yemeni were able to do. Iranians will have much more advanced missiles than Yemenis, and they will be fighting also like in our home turf. You know, and they, you know, what happens? What happens when that U.S. aircraft carrier group get wiped out in a missile attack?
That's the cat or the bomber.
I mean, like that. And guess what? You know that. If Iranian missiles can take out U.S. aircraft carrier group, what does that say about their U.S. Navy's chances against China?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what is he willing to risk bomber getting knocked out the sky? I mean, that bomber is going to have to get close to Iran in order to do the bombing raid that he is talking about. Is he really going to go in Iranian airspace when several F-35s have already been taken out of the air? Like, I don't know if these people are thinking about that. Like, have you seen some of the harebrained comments that have been coming out of people in the U.S. on social media? They've been like, yeah, we have to support Israel. We have to, bomb Iran. We have to do regime change. We have to do all of this stuff. And none of them are taking in the real consequences of, you understand that those aircraft carriers are 1980s weapon platform that drones and missiles can knock that shit out of the water. They don't seem to get it. Like they seem to be so like in this blissful state of American power can do anything that it doesn't really take into account real world reality. It's weird.
It's like everybody's showing their ass right now on Twitter, and like you can tell who are getting paid by the APACs or by the Israel lobby, who is on the take, right? I mean, like, because this is the war against Iran is deeply unpopular with average American, like real people, right. like this is very deeply the people who are saying I stand with Israel, either they're probably on the Epstein's list, or they're getting a nice chunk of change from APAC, right?
That's what they're saying about Trump, right? It's like, how many videos do they have of Trump from Epstein? They keep saying it.
Well, I don't think that would even tank Trump's ratings, but I think what the war would a war against Iran would actually tank his approval ratings, because there's no this is very, very unpopular war. I don't have a sense of anyone who is not among those talking head class that actually want to go to die for Israel. I know nobody who wants to die for Israel.
Well, MAGA, I don't believe that the cultists that's in MAGA are going to abandon Trump in mass. I think maybe 5%. The Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Thomas Masseys. Hell, he even attacked Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is like, dude, your presidency is going to go up in smoke if you do this. And he's like, that goofball needs to stop, running his mouth. It's like, okay. And then Trump is screaming about a nuclear weapon. He didn't even have sense enough to come up with a different model than Bush. Like, we've run the script before, right? Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, weapons of mass destruction in Iran. And what makes it even worse is the fact that his own person in his own government said it's not true. That is just absurd on top of absurd. What do you think happens here? If you had to prognosticate, and no money is at stake, nothing, but if you had to make a guess on whether or not Trump is bluffing, or whether or not
it's very possible. I think right now, Trump, he's being a very egotistic guy, right? He's just probably kind of really annoyed that his decision has been questioned by people like Tucker Carlson, who has been, one of his biggest supporters. So I think he's just annoyed right now. But whether he will authorize this war, I think what might happen if which is a big if he authorizes war, I think it's more likely to take in the form of symbolic bombings. There will be some missile launches from the U.S. Navy ship, and there will be maybe a couple bombing rounds, and maybe then Trump will call it victory. Say, look, I did this thing. I forced the Iran to come down. I saved the world once again. I saved Israel. I think that's a far more likely scenario.
Carl, there's no such thing as an imaginary bombing run in this situation. I mean, if Iran...
No, not imaginary bombing run. I mean, it was symbolic. Like
I'm sorry. I misspoke. What I mean is, Iran is not going to sit there and let the U.S. take pop shots at it without responding. They're going to see, they see this very seriously. And I think they have every right to. For one, they need to break Israel's back. There's that. Two, they can't allow the United States to effectively force them into some kind of negotiation under threat of bombings, which means...
There's no negotiation, Jamar. There's no negotiation. Israel already killed all the negotiators, so there will be no negotiation.
According to Trump, right?
And Trump is going to... right now, what Iran has been doing so far is they're concentrating on hitting Israel, but not to the level that will immediately bring in United States. They're hitting Israel to putting Israel on notice, but they're not hitting it to the level that Israel's collapse is imminent. Because that would definitely, is United States would not allow Israel to collapse. It will definitely step in. So far, I think Iran has doing a very calibrated campaign. They're making sure they're hitting Israel, making sure Israel is taking the pain, but not to the point it will break Israel completely, so it will trigger the U.S. entrance. But this is the thing. Trump is unpredictable, right? Trump is unpredictable. Right. He might just do it for the heck of it, and and maybe to his loyalty to we do know like his donor. Trump's biggest donor is the owner of Las Vegas Sands. Yes. Yeah. She's Adelson is the biggest Trump founder. Maybe out of loyalty, who knows? Like he just did it. You know what? I'll do a favor for you. You did a favor for me, give me all this money for campaigning. I'll do a favor for you. I'll launch a couple bombs in Iran's direction. And I don't think Trump necessarily will think through the consequences of his actions.
Right.
The Iranian escalation. There's a lot of hubris also among the U.S. ruling class.
Yes.
The fact that they at one point they thought they could fight a 3-front war, against China, Iran, and Russia. It kind of tell you about their overinflated sense of importance. And so I think it's gonna be I think if the U.S. enter the war, the U.S. empire will end. That's my crystal ball. I'm just gonna put it out there. I think if United States enter this war, the U.S. empire will end because everybody will see the so-called vaunted U.S. military prowess is actually all smoke and mirrors.
The emperor has no clothes.
I'll stand by that.
I agree with you on this. I think
we'll find out in the next 48 hours.
Unfortunately.
We'll find out in the next 48 hours.
Unfortunately. Carl, my man, I always appreciate you. The audience loves you. We have a damn good crowd here today. And just so the audience would know, Carl Jha, he is host. Damn it. There we are. He is host of Silk and Steel podcasts focused on China and surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Jha. You can follow his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk, the letter N. And you can subscribe and support their podcast on patreon.com, Silk and Steel. Definitely check him out, man. This is just a fraction of Carl's awesomeness. Great spot, man. I swear. And I think you're right. I can't say I disagree with pretty much anything that you said today. So thank you for this, Carl. You be safe, okay?
Thank you.
Have a good one.